Here we go. This is going to be one jam-packed hour. Welcome, bienvenue, our co-design session for the annual symposium. And we'll just start with a few very brief opening remarks. And these were described a little bit in the backgrounder that you received for this meeting, the two-pager in advance. I just wanted to punctuate a couple of or a few of the planning considerations for the symposium. The moment in time point, that really is about the stage of development of the projects, meaning very diverse in your own moments in time, but also the moment in time for the Mental Health Promotion Innovation Fund community. It's very early days. We're getting to know each other, so we're taking that into account. Of course, the MHPIF objectives, program objectives, are key, as well as the KDE Hub's mandate, so that primary focus, of course, on the knowledge development and exchange. This next point, requiring a little bit of moment in time update, is about the sessions that will best be done in person, potentially. We're watching the guidelines from the Public Health Agency, from the university, and that relate to travel and events. Those, as I think all of us know and are experiencing, are unfolding moment to moment, and we will absolutely be in touch with you about any changes to the plan. Right now, we're staying the course on this. However, we'll be in touch about any potential changes. Best done in person, at least that's our assumption right now, be it in May or potentially deferred, or some virtual options. So we'll keep you posted on that. And best done also with the Hub team, recognizing those expertise well beyond the Hub as well. Some of the practical parameters that are also going into decisions about sessions will be things like how much time we're spending together, the resources, etc. So we've got some of those practical considerations that will also feed into selection of topics and types of sessions. So next up, just to remind you again, this is in the backgrounder, 3 firm opportunities for your input on the annual symposium structure and sessions. So just a huge thank you to everyone. The needs assessment calls in particular, the one-on-one calls with each of you, thank you so much for such rich input, and that is really going to be a source of support for identifying what is useful to do in person. Today's session, of course, and then if desired, we'll seek your input on this, but if desired, we also will be putting together some session-specific planning teams, and there'll be an invitation to anyone who would like to take part in some of those planning sessions. So opportunities for input. A reminder of the virtual participation guidelines, which everyone was modeling so well when joining in already. About the muting to reduce any background noise. When you are speaking, to please identify yourself along with gender pronoun if you so choose. And we'll be active with the chat function as well. And for those connecting by phone only, we will pause and seek your input as appropriate. So I'm so pleased to move on to the very brief introduction for our facilitator today, Ryan Vozan. I'm smiling because it's just such a joy to introduce Ryan. For those of you who see the video, his smiling face is not only on the slide, but it's also on the screen. And you can see it's obviously a recent photo. I can't even tell the difference, Ryan. Ryan is from Overlap Associates, where the Hub is thrilled to be working with that team. It's a very dynamic local team in Kitchener-Waterloo. Their focus is human-centered design, design thinking, really about facilitation to unleash creativity and integrate multiple perspectives. Ryan himself is a director of programs at Overlap. He's a facilitator, very seasoned facilitator and coach, and we really are delighted to be working with him. His formal training is pretty cool. I mean, it's an integration of actually knowledge integration from the University of Waterloo, but then also a pretty cool program from the Ontario College of Art and Design. So system thinking, design thinking from that perspective. So I will just, with that, turn things over to Ryan. As a reminder, this webinar will indeed primarily be in English. However, full opportunity to be asking and answering questions in French, and any clarifications required, please don't hesitate to chime in, those of you who would like any exchange between the two languages. So, Ryan, over to you.
Thanks, Barb. As Barb said, I'll predominantly be facilitating in English. Despite my last name, I am not very bilingual, but of course, I encourage conversation in both languages. So on the next slide, you'll see just a bit of an overview of what we're going to be doing today, and I'll read that aloud for folks that aren't participating via video. We spent a bit of time sort of opening up the session. Our three main agenda items are to prioritize a set of draft objectives we have for our symposium. Two is to develop some ideas for specific topics, skills, knowledge, things that we want covered during our symposium together. And then three, ideas we have around the structure and our formats for sessions. Again, assuming it's still in person. But for sure, we can talk a little bit about how we can also take advantage of virtual techniques even before or leading up to the symposium. And then we'll leave some time at the end for some questions and closing remarks. Yeah, sort of a brief agenda, but three important conversations around our objectives for the meeting, some ideas we have for some topics, and then how we actually want to deliver those topics through the symposium. Today, we're going to be using a software called Menti. Menti is M-E-N-T-I. And so for those joining on the computer right now, I'll post a link in the chat. And so if you can open up the chat, you'll see it there. It's also on the slide. That's your easiest way to sort of connect. You don't have to get started right away, but at least get that link open so that you have it. For those joining on the phone, I want you to open up a web browser. So whether that's on your cell phone or on your computer, I need you to have a web browser open so that you can see the questions and some of the responses coming in, or submit your responses. So the website is menti.com, so MENTI.com. And then I'm going to give you a code when you're on that website. So if you can, use your phone or your computer, any web browser should work. Maybe a computer is a little bit preferred so that you can see the question a little bit bigger. And then use your URL, your address bar to go to menti.com, MENTI.com. And there you should be able to submit a code to join a session. And so that code is 373584. And I'll repeat that again in a minute or so, just so folks are logged in. And if you do have any issues, feel free to unmute yourself and just kind of raise your hand. I'll also assume that one or two folks aren't able to get on at all. So I'm going to try to repeat the questions out loud and give people joining over the phone priority to sort of lead off our conversations related to these questions. So for each of our three sort of agenda items, I have one question. We'll start with you sort of completing that solo, and then we'll kind of discuss as a group. So it's menti.com, MENTI.com. And then the code is 373584. So hopefully most folks are on by now, and then you'll be able to see the question on that URL. And then I'll also start sharing my screen now so you can see the question in big. And then once some of the results are in, we'll display that. So if the Secretariat could stop sharing, I'll be able to start sharing mine. Perfect. So for those joining over the video, you'll see now I'm started sharing my screen. And for those over the phone, all it shows is what the question is and what some of the responses are. So for our first question, it's a forced ranking question. So if you're on menti.com, you should see these options, but I'll just read them out quick. The question is to force rank these objectives by which should receive the most emphasis. So by all means, all of them are important objectives, but we just wanted to kind of understand some of the relative importance between them. So this is kind of our opening question to kind of get folks used to using Menti and to discuss some of the objectives, draft objectives we have for the symposium. So if you're on menti.com and you either click the link or you use the code 373584, you should have seen this question and basically you'll be able to drag and drop our objectives. So the draft objectives we have, there are 5 of them. I'll just read them out really quick. Create supportive connections within the MHPIF community. Increase knowledge and build skills in selective areas that are relevant to the needs of projects and best done in person. Consider meaningful and realistic knowledge development. Priorities within and across our mental health promotion innovation fund projects, and then begin to construct the innovation fund projects stories so far. The last one is inspire a shared vision for how, as a sort of a community, our innovation funds can come together to contribute to child and youth mental health promotion in Canada. So those are the 5. Again, if you're on menti.com, you should be able to see those and rank those. Give you another couple seconds to see if you can kind of submit your results. And I'm hiding them so far, but I'll share them in a moment. Again, use the chat function or unmute yourself to let me know if you have any issues contributing. Okay. I'll share the results now, and then for the folks that are joining by phone, I'll read them out loud. So it looks like we have a tie. Oh, no, not a tie for first. Relatively comparable importance across them. I'll start to read them out, although it looks like 1 or 2 people are still submitting their responses. The most important, again, this is relative importance across them. The first position was create supportive connections with the Mental Health Promotion Innovation Fund community. Looks like number 2 is currently increase knowledge and build skills in selective areas that are relevant to the needs of projects and best done in person. The third one is consider meaningful and realistic knowledge development priorities within and across our Innovation Fund projects. Our fourth one, although still pretty close, is inspire a shared vision for how the innovation funds can contribute to child and youth mental health promotion in Canada. Our last one that didn't get very many votes was begin to construct the mental health promotion innovation fund projects story so far. So not too many people excited about jumping in first thing with our project's story, but the other ones are fairly relatively close and ranked. So I want to do a bit of a reflection on these results. If you're joining by the phone, I'd love for you to kind of contribute first. Those by a video kind of have the advantage of body language to know when to jump in. So if you're joining by the phone, my first question is kind of what stands out about these results. So our first one being create supportive connections within the Innovation Fund community. And our last one that didn't get very many votes is beginning to construct our stories. So the first question is what stands out about these results? So if you're joining by phone, feel free to unmute yourself now and just a word or a phrase or a sentence, something that stands out about the relative ranking of these results. I think we have a couple folks joining by phone. Awesome. And if no one over the phone, anyone that's joining online want to unmute themselves and respond to my first question, which is sort of what stands out about these results? Anything sort of maybe exciting about how you see the results ranked, or anything surprising here?
Hi, my name is Gina. I'm from the Center for School Mental Health at Western University. I think for me, the results really just indicate the fact that specific to supportive connections, it seems like a lot of us might believe that there's a lot of resources amongst the group. And if we build these connections, then we have access to resources and knowledge within our group. And then after that, we can kind of co-create any priority areas or any areas that we need to build more knowledge on. So I think without these connections, with these connections, it'll facilitate the second and third priority a lot more easily. So that's how I just understood it.
Perfect, Gina. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I really like that idea of supportive connections. You need to have supportive connections to be able to sort of do that co-learning together. Awesome. Anything else sort of exciting or surprising about these results?
This is Megan from Community Food Centers Canada. I'll echo what Gina said. I think it makes a lot of sense to really use the time that we have in person to start really deepening the connections we have with one another. And I'll also just, I guess, confirm that the fifth point, at least for me, and it seems maybe others as well, feels a bit soon. I appreciated that the emphasis was on beginning to develop a story, but it seems like because we're in a pilot and the projects are so iterative, it feels a little too soon to really get into that.
Thank you for sharing, Megan. Yeah, absolutely. It looks like many folks agree with you. And while the emphasis is just on beginning, it's still a little too soon in an iterative process to start to shape our stories. I'm just going to read these out one more time in order that they were voted. And my next question is just any gaps, anything you were surprised not to see covered in these draft objectives. So I'll read them out really quick, and then feel free, again, over the phone, unmute yourself. Let me know any gaps you see in the draft objectives. So create supportive connections within the Innovation Fund community, increase knowledge and build skills in selected areas that are relevant to the needs of projects and best done in person. Consider meaningful and realistic knowledge development priorities within and across the Innovation Fund projects. Inspire a shared vision for how the Innovation Funds can contribute to child and youth mental health promotion in Canada. And the last one that didn't get very many votes, begin to construct the Innovation Fund project's stories so far. What, any gaps you perceive across these sort of draft objectives? Anything you were surprised not to see up there?
One question I'd like to ask the group, it's one sort of extension of the conversation so far about the fifth ranked objective, about the beginning to construct the project story, is that, and this is something we've heard through the one-on-one conversations as well, this desire for some exposure to and directly working with more innovative or effective knowledge exchange opportunities, and the use of story, the use of narrative to do so. And so one of the ways we could adapt this, less about beginning to construct the story, but maybe anticipating the use of story, the use of narrative for effective knowledge exchange, that sort of build that in from the outset, and with that expectation that we'll embrace some storytelling over time about individual projects, the community as a whole. So just thought, if there are any comments on sort of that recasting, be helpful to hear your thoughts.
Thanks, Barb. Yeah, that framing is interesting. It's the more so the philosophy of storytelling as a foundation rather than the process of developing our stories right now. Any reactions to that comment?
Hi, it's Michael Quagg from the Community-Based Research Center. That sounds great to me. I mean, I think that is part of what I was hoping for under the second objective, and just sort of thinking through, what are some concrete skills, frameworks, different ways of approaching interventions that might be so useful. So I definitely think storytelling is something that I'm sort of keen to, pick up some practical and theoretical skills and ideas around how we might want to approach that. And if there's, shared interest in that, then, I think that feeds into some of the other objectives as well. So.
Thanks, Michael. That makes a lot of sense. And I see a big thumbs up from Barb. And I think that's a pretty good segue into our
just a second, Ryan. Sorry.
Oh, sure.
There's one comment in the chat. I just wanted to make sure that you had captured that. I think it was identified or added in as one of the potential gaps from these objectives, and that is that it would be nice to look into how to effectively impact policies, which I don't think is quite captured in this ranking.
Perfect. Awesome. So
hi, I just want to hi. This is Mena from Impact. I just want to add to that storytelling. Our entire program is run by youth, and they do all of the work within the content of what we're doing in community. So hearing the perspectives from the youth, I think there's a lot of value and there's a lot of worth in that. Sort of their storytelling of how they're working within communities and doing the work from a youth-based perspective.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you for adding that in. Okay. And then, yeah, so as was said, the additional kind of perceived gap, it would be nice to look into how to effectively impact policies. Awesome. So I think, yeah, based on that, I think we have a pretty good foundation for our next question. So I'm going to advance the slide forward. And just quickly before you respond to this question, again, if you have the website open, it should sort of auto advance to this next question. If not, feel free to refresh. But on that Menti website, the question now is, what skills and knowledge would you like to build or refine at the symposium? So I heard some initial ideas here. For this question, you can submit as many times as you want. So if you want to kind of explain one idea and then hit enter, if there's someone else around the table, in your office, or you have another idea, you can kind of just describe another idea and then hit enter. So you shouldn't be limited to just one response. So I'm going to give you a minute or so to get your ideas in around skills and knowledge that you would like to build or refine at the symposium. And again, if you're having any issues with Menti, feel free to jump in the chat or let me know. So the question again is, what skills and knowledge would you like to build or refine at the symposium? So we heard some initial ideas already during our conversation. Feel free to add those in to make sure they're captured. And in the same process, after about a minute of folks having an opportunity to put their answers in, we'll have an opportunity to share and reflect. We'll go about another 30 seconds. As we start the conversation up, you can always add more ideas in. I don't think the poll will close when we start the conversation. So as you hear other people talk about their ideas, and if that sparks new ideas, feel free to continue to add new ideas in. So what skills and knowledge would you like to build or refine at the symposium? So there's a few ideas starting to come in. Again, if you want to, based on what you're hearing, add further ones in, feel free. I'm going to start to read a couple of these out so that we can all kind of get to know some of these ideas. And if you're joining by phone, feel free to add yours in additionally. So we have storytelling tools and methods, unsurprisingly, using social media for knowledge dissemination, other creative strategies to disseminate, knowledge translation ideas, strategies to influence and measure the influence of projects on policy and practice. We have evaluation, KDE for influencing policy, learning from each other's projects, challenges, and solutions, KDE for influencing media, KDE here meaning knowledge development and exchange. And then in sort of our third scrolling category, we have project management skills, how to work more collaboratively with families, developing campaigns and knowledge mobilization tools, and then how to identify key stakeholders and obtain or maintain intersectoral collaborations, how to plan for scaling up projects is the last piece of that one. And as new ideas come in, I'll try to read them out loud. But as you hear some of those ideas, and in particular ideas maybe that other folks put out, so same question as before, anything that kind of stands out to you about some of those ideas, maybe one that you're particularly excited about. So invite the folks over the phone to jump in first if you're able to. And then otherwise, anyone on the line can unmute themselves and sort of join the conversation. Anything that sort of stands out to you, maybe an idea you're particularly excited about. Another way of thinking of it is sort of an idea maybe that intrigues you, something you want to kind of learn a little bit more about. Maybe someone else submitted an idea that you're surprised or you're intrigued to learn a little bit more about. And as new ideas come in, I'll try to add those in. So we have how to reach vulnerable families, evaluations tools, maybe working together to create a new tool or method that can be used across projects. Anything exciting or intriguing about some of these ideas? And we have one more: participatory program design and evaluation. If not, I'm wondering if anyone who submitted an idea wanted to sort of elaborate on their idea and why you think maybe it's really important that we cover it during the symposium. So if there was anything you sort of submitted you wanted to elaborate on or sort of explain to the group why it's an important idea to cover, feel free to unmute yourself now and let us know. Similarly, if there are any ideas that you're you kind of want to co-sign on, if there's anything that someone else put up that you think is particularly important that we cover, that we want to ensure we don't lose during our symposium planning process? Are there any ideas up there that you wanted to kind of double down on, make sure that we do include in the symposium?
Hi, this is Gina from the Center for School Mental Health. So one piece that really stood out to me that was shared was specific to intersectoral collaboration and stakeholder engagement, simply because when you're moving into the scaling up phase, those relationships are really important. And I think another piece too that we're experiencing in our pilot phase is the fact that a lot of organizations or stakeholders that you're connected to have their own priorities to their own funders, and how do you align that and work together to meet both your objectives and their objectives, and being conscious of that, so that way it doesn't slow down your process.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for sharing, Gina. I've highlighted that one on the screen for those joining over the video. The key stakeholders in obtaining or maintaining intersectoral collaborations. In particular, understanding what their objectives are and how we can make sure that ours are aligning, not contradicting theirs. Awesome. So we have one more question. We have a pretty good understanding of what some of our objectives are, have some initial ideas of some specific skills and knowledge. If there's something you think of today, tomorrow, down the line, feel free to reach out. This is sort of a collaborative development process, so we'll be taking new ideas as we move forward. But our last question is more on the format and the structure. So if I go to the next slide, you'll see the question pop up. And we've phrased it in terms of what you've seen done in the past. So the question is, are there session styles that you find particularly effective? Or what have you seen done successfully at other conferences and symposiums? So I'm going to take a minute or two to let people sort of respond in. There are some examples, maybe types of breaks or types of activities we could do, ways or formats for networking and other social opportunities. Anything you can think of in terms of a format or a structure that would influence the design of the symposium are helpful ideas here. So this is kind of an opportunity for us to kind of learn from positive experiences you've had in the past. You can, if there is a negative one, just frame it in the positive. Not doing this thing is also helpful. So I'll take, again, I'll give folks about a minute to jot down an idea. Same thing as last time. If you have multiple ideas, feel free to hit enter or hit return, submit in between. You should be able to submit as many ideas as you want. So if there are any session styles that you find particularly effective, or things you've seen done successfully at other conferences and symposiums. Go for another 30 seconds. Okay, so I'll show the results, but again, you should be able to still submit ideas as we go through these. So there's a few here. I'll read out the initial ones, and as they come in, I'll try to capture any new ones. So in terms of session styles that we find particularly effective, or things we've seen done successfully at other conferences and symposiums. The first one is I really enjoy active breaks. For example, a short stretching or yoga session, or even a walk. Perfect, yes. I think maybe the implication there is also breaks long enough that you can get outside and walk around. Relating back to sort of that self-care piece, that's good. panel discussions, roundtables with experts as a format, and small groups with a moderator, so grouped with people of similar interests from different disciplines, as an example. We heard roundtable discussions a second time, and so small enough so everyone has an opportunity to speak. Absolutely. We also have sessions with focused questions and objectives. So being very clear about what the questions are and objectives are for each session. On the our last sort of scrolling set, we have World Cafes, sort of the appreciative inquiry approach, very effective at getting people to work together. We also have having youth more involved with planning and executing information, giving workshops that are meaningful to youth, and youth presenting these workshops. The last one I see so far is allowing time for groups to introduce their projects face-to-face. And a couple more are streaming in. I'll read them out as they come in. Mapping activities, large hand-drawn map on a common wall, allowing projects to identify in their location either successes or challenges or resources. And similarly, we see a gallery wall idea. For the gallery wall, actually walking around the room from station to station on particular topics, just getting moving is helpful. Awesome. So similar questions as before, anything that stands out there, something particularly exciting or intriguing, or something you want to kind of co-sign, something you want to make sure is present during our symposium. So anyone can unmute and join in the conversation.
This is Louise here. I really like the gallery. Having participated in the gallery walks, I find it gets people to network more naturally, and it gets people talking. So that's a very interesting idea.
Perfect. Yeah, when we do sessions, facilitations, especially larger group ones, one of our first activities is often the gallery walk, where we can have a set of posters, whether it relates to a specific subject matter or here kind of particular topics, or even from project to project, and having giving everyone the opportunity to walk around. It certainly helps to build that initial sense of community and encourage sort of more organic networking. Thanks, Louise.
And maybe building on that or other ideas, the point about allowing time for groups to introduce their projects in person. I'm curious, some thoughts on how you can imagine that happening. Again, there's lots of, again, unsurprising to me. I'm really encouraged by the small group, the interactive, the active as well. But this sort of introduction of projects face to face, we've done that virtually. There's obviously stuff in writing, but there's really nothing like the in-person sort of conversation. I just wonder if whoever made that comment or others want to comment a little bit about what can you imagine happening for those project introductions?
Thanks, Barb. So does anyone have, maybe a preferred format or a preferred way of kind of communicating their project so far?
My sense is because, it's Louise speaking again, my sense is because of the vast array of different projects, the subjects, the way they're what they're studying, what they're doing, the research, what the intervention is all about. I would see more clustered around, I don't know, youth, child, and other immigrants. It'd be, at least as a starter, it would be, I think, more interesting for folks to connect around. I'm talking about groups here, populations, targeted populations, as a first step before moving on to broader or larger and other populations.
Thanks, Louise. Yeah, I think similar, something I've seen done really well is that sort of peer-to-peer model. So kind of an open space style where anyone can kind of suggest an agenda item, but essentially encouraging each project to pick a specific focus question, something that they want sort of that peer input on. And so then people get to self-select which tables they go to, but then at the table they get a bit of an introduction to the project. And then, you know, it's more of a collaborative conversation, a generative conversation around maybe a specific issue that project is facing. And by highlighting some of those issues, you can start to see, yeah, some natural connections between different projects. Any other ideas or things you want to kind of comment on for this question? Session styles that we find particularly effective, or things we've seen done successfully at other conferences and symposiums? Okay. Hearing none, we've kind of gone through our three major topics for our agenda today. First one being kind of a review of those objectives, draft objectives for our symposium. We have a pretty good sense of some relative importance where we want to put some weight behind those objectives. We have some initial ideas for some skills and knowledge, but I know that list will continue to grow and be prioritized as we between now and the symposium. And then we have some initial ideas of what we, some formats and things we could see that would be particularly effective, both in terms of the structure and including, you know, active breaks in the self-care piece, but then also formats for specific sessions, encouraging small group dialogue and giving projects the opportunity to present to maybe peers that they are working with similar populations and things like that. Any other sort of final comments on this before we kind of move into our closing? Anything you know, stand out in particular, either exciting, surprising, or even scary about some of the topics we discussed across our objectives, our topics and skills and knowledge, and our formats? Any sort of final remarks? Hearing none.
Well, Ryan, maybe one more pause, maybe to say, okay, a chance to say, do not do this. I mean, I love the framing of, yeah, these are things that have worked well. And if there's anything you would say that would really be off-putting to you, that's fair game here too.
Yeah, we've been mostly focusing on the positive. Is there anything, any concerns you have, something that we don't want to focus on, either a skill or a topic that has been covered enough over the last few months or years, or even a format that you know doesn't particularly work? Any last comments on any concerns you have around something, maybe something we shouldn't cover or an approach we shouldn't take? Okay. Hearing none, I'll make sure the results from our work today are shared with the Secretariat, who can then forward them along. And then again, as you moving forward, as new ideas come to mind, often creativity takes time, and it comes from the most unlikely of places. The sort of those eureka moments, walking down the street, not really thinking about it. So if there's anything over the next coming days and weeks that you want to see covered, either in terms of a skill or knowledge, or a format that you want to see used, feel free to reach out. Okay, so why don't we move into our closing now? Barb, did you want to jump in next?
Sure, happy to do that. Perhaps just a question out there. We've, I think, very helpfully focused on the three. I mean, again, consistent with the thoughts that you shared, focused questions, focused objectives. Hopefully that's been modeled a little bit by even this setup for the co-design. I'm curious whether, and we've purposely focused on those three questions. I'm wondering, just a brief pause to see if anybody has any other questions about the symposium that don't relate directly to those three questions. Again, either via chat, unmute your lines, any questions that are on your mind. As you may be thinking about that, just a couple of quick remarks. I mean, I think the Secretariat was probably really chuckling over this one. The comment about the wall charts and mapping activities. I'm kind of known for, you know, Riley's wall charts, and you know, it's gone from, we've done different symposiums or events over the years, and it's gone from needing to bring special luggage that has these really, you know, thick boards to cloth options that we can start posting things on the wall. So that's great. You can be guaranteed some wall charts. So any questions that anybody has, anything that comes to mind right now, more broadly about the symposium? You know, you can always follow up as well by email to any member of the Secretariat. Hopefully what this session has demonstrated as well, I mean, it's one of our, as you heard in our orientation calls, our core commitment to the participatory approaches. And I do want to reinforce that, you know, that's invitational and an opportunity. It's not required, mandatory, meant to be coercion in any way. And hopefully this co-design session is just one, you're seeing that as sort of one expression of a participatory approach with a complete sort of open mind for whatever comes of that, open mind from the hub's perspective about where that leads. If there's, you know, with the input that we've received, I mean, it's fantastic. We'll be linking that with the more individualized input that you provided for us in the needs assessment conversations. So all very, very helpful. I do want to extend a huge thank you, merci, to Ryan. Fantastic to organize the session with us, and for, I think, very savvy and helpful facilitation, inclusive facilitation, very clear for this group. So thank you for that, Ryan, very much. And to everyone who joined and you know, participated. That's it's really great to hear the insights, and also the hub planning team. We all know that any event only comes off because there's a, you know, there's a team organizing it in the background. So I just want to extend a thank you to them as well. So in our first webinar with all of you, let me tell you, like backed by popular demand, we need a poll because everybody said, what do you like the best? The polls. So, so we will do one more poll here. And I did mention in my opening remarks about different opportunities for, again, opportunities, not required, but for participating in organizing and planning the annual symposium. And we would just like to do one poll about your interests in potentially being part of session-specific planning teams. Those are incredibly focused. We're like, and I don't, you know, no need to sort of sell these, etc. This is an anonymous poll. It'll give us a general sense of how much emphasis to place on the, you know, invitations for participating in planning some different sessions, and we'll extend those invitations, again, cast the net wide to all of you, but just getting a sense right now with this poll about, you know, whether there's even any interest whatsoever in helping to organize a session. And we'll reach out once the session topics are more defined, and because that obviously makes it much more tangible and specific to the actual content that you might align yourselves with. So I will invite the Secretariat to post the poll and invite your votes. The poll question is, in what ways would you like to be involved in symposium planning? And obviously that's in addition to our one-on-one conversation and today's session. And you can choose any of the following: reviewing, providing feedback on a draft agenda; 2, helping to plan a session; 3, presenting a session; 4, and this one needs tone. Thank you very much. I would just like to attend. And any other. And we can discuss those. So the poll is likely open for those votes, and those who are not able to contribute, please do unmute your lines and or contribute to the chat box with your thoughts. Again, with the poll, it will be anonymous. You're not volunteering for anything. It's just to give us a general sense of, you know, how much emphasis to give this in our planning. So maybe about 30 more seconds to cast your votes, one or more of these, and then the grand reveal. Maybe I should have said you're not volunteering yourselves, and you can't volunteer somebody else, okay?
Yeah, so the results should be showing up now.
Okay, so the results suggest that reviewing and providing feedback on a draft agenda for those who voted, that's 63% of you; helping to plan a session at 25%, presenting a session at 13%, and half of you would like to attend. Well, I'm assuming all of you would like to attend, but the point being, I'm trusting here, this is how I'll interpret it. I'm trusting the organization, the flow, and the input that's received so far will be taken into account, and I'm pleased to attend and participate in the session as it's planned. That's super helpful, really helpful to hear that. And nobody had anything under other, so we don't need to explore that. Would anybody like to comment on your voting or any of these options for participating in symposium planning? Cool. Okay, so we'll wrap up, again, being respectful of the time that we have together. So the next steps from this, again, reiterating what's in the backgrounder that you received, and adding 1. So what was in the backgrounder, the invitation to participate as you've guided us in that last poll, that there will indeed be a meeting package for registered participants. We will minimize, if not have no sort of preparation. It'll be great to come and actively participate, but there will be a package that hopefully helps with some orientation and helping each of us come into that space together, and then hosting the event. The one that I'll add is about the hosting the event. We, of course, will provide updates on the plans as guidelines evolve, and whether it will be, there will be an event this year and soon within the general time frame that we're proposing. It may be one of those things you say to your kids, yes, later. So it might be deferred in person. It may be part in person with some virtual components. It may be fully in person. Just those options are still out there. And you can trust that we will be in touch with you with those updates as they unfold. So once again, in closing, I do want to just say once again, thank you so much to everyone. You will hear from us again soon, and that will close our session for today. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.